The life force of your bond, a power like light itself, unseen for generations, a dyad in the force.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Dyad in the Force. I am your host, Element 7, and to your guys' right, and my also right. How's it going, Choco?
Hello. It's going good. It's going good. It's Choco a little sleepy, but here, ready to party. We also have a fantastic guest in Zane here. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, guys. Good. Excited to see you guys again.
Yes. We did meet Zane, or my two credits, at our first ever Dyad Con in Anaheim, and it was a wonderful time. Zane, if you can introduce yourself to everybody in the chat and our audience, let them know what you're about, where they can find you on socials, and also a general recap of Dyad Con and your experience there.
Yeah, so I'm Zane. I met these guys at Dyad Con and been following them on TikTok for a while. I am huge Lego enthusiast, as you can kind of see behind me, all my parts collection there. And outside of that, just bonded over the mutual love of Star Wars, right? Huge into books. I've probably read 30 plus Star Wars canon books so far, and I actually just finished reading the arc of the latest High Republic book, Temptations of the Force. So excited to write up a review for that pretty soon. As for DyadCon, it was really cool to meet people that I have now been talking to for like over a year, and to get in person and just kind of hang out for the first time. I think if you ask anyone, they would say that was their favorite part of kind of the whole event, just being able to interact and hang out with people who have become friends.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had a couple people there that were going to Disneyland for the first time and even going to Galaxy's Edge for the first time. They had wonderful memories, wonderful moments, but yeah, I think the general sentiment was their favorite part of the entire trip was getting to meet everybody for the first time that they hadn't met and hang out. Some people said, man, the highlight of the trip was just being in a hotel room and kind of just vibing with each other, and you know what, I get that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point. The real DyadCon is the friends we meet along the way. You know?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So for today's episode, we do have another segment of Everything You Know About Star Wars is Wrong. So we'll get to that here shortly, and then we're going to do a High Republic rewind. We are only going to focus on Phase 1 and Phase 2 for the purposes of spoilers. But man, phase 3 has been slow going. I didn't so like when project was it Lumen project?
Luminous 5.
Luminous
Project Luminous and Luminous 5 were the original ones, yeah.
When it came out, I was so on board, but it was a pandemic thing. So like Light of the Jedi came out, and 2 hours, 3 hours from its release, I had recorded my review. And then it was boom, 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 book to book to book to book. Phase 2 happened, book to book to book, maybe a little bit of a slowdown, and then finished that phase. And then I think I still am on Escape from Valo.
Okay.
And it's frustrating me that I haven't been up to date with. I've read the Starlight comics, but it's frustrating to me that I haven't been up to date with Phase 3.
I think actually I should ask Choco, how far are you?
I am behind on the comics. I did not receive an arc for Temptation of the Force. So yeah, other than that, I've read all the other books.
I will say, I think that the tough part is there's so much material. I'm up to date on the comics. I actually did not carve out time to read Escape from Valo. I have it now, but I haven't read it yet. And I think the challenge to High Republic is you can either try to be a completionist and read everything, but at the same time, you can get the main events of what's going on if you don't. You'll get anecdotes here and there, but you don't need to read all of it. And I think, especially as it refers to the Acolyte, there's a lot of people that have wanted to read all the High Republic before the Acolyte begins, and you're not going to need to do that.
Good luck.
You're not going to need to do that.
Yeah.
Right? I put it at, like, outside of what we have seen in trailers and like posters, I'm gonna set the over under at like 2.5, maybe 3.5 book references outside of what we've already seen. And I feel pretty comfortable in that line. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. But, you know, I think all that book material, it's supplemental. It's a nice to have, but it's not a need to have. But it is a great way to introduce yourself into that aspect of the world.
Yeah, I think that's been the case for a lot of projects that we've gotten recently with Ahsoka, with Acolyte coming up, even with Skeleton Crew. There seems to be, like, I've come up with the phrase, those with the knowledge create their own problems. And I feel like a lot of us who do know things, who do read the books, often make the mistake, myself included, of being like, oh, you gotta like read this before you watch the show. And I learned like a couple months ago after Ahsoka, when my brother watched it, and he absolutely loved it. And then there was the people who were reviewing it that had seen Clone Wars and Rebels and all of that, and they were like a little bit kind of a little bit hesitant to love it, or rather were finding problems in it based on Clone Wars and Rebels and things that they knew. And I came to the realization that, you know, I was speaking to Mattman. His wife watched Ahsoka, loved it, had not seen Clone Wars, Rebels, anything, and I feel like a lot of us want them to do their homework when doing these projects, so that we get our just desserts in terms of like those Easter eggs or those threads. But the people that are just like watching The Mandalorian and watching these TV shows without any of these this prior knowledge they're enjoying this stuff, and I'm like, man, I have created the problem myself.
Yeah, it's me. Hi.
It's
a problem. It's me.
It's a similar problem in a lot of things. If you take Lego, for example, in Star Wars, people forget that it's designed for the masses and not the like super hardcore fans. And so as a super hardcore fan, you forget to think about things from the business point of view, right? And like what's going to make the most dollars. So when you look at Ahsoka show, I think what really became interesting is you had all these fans that had seen Rebels who kind of slotted right in perfectly because it was a continuation. And then you had other fans who don't watch the live action. They're like, I don't know who some of these characters are, and I don't feel that same emotional connection when like Ezra and Sabine reunite. Whereas people who watch Rebels are like, oh, finally, like that's so exciting. But if you're someone who has no idea, you're like, why should I care? Right? Because you don't know the emotional depth of all of that. So I think there's challenges to all of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, how's the saying go? You make something for everybody.
Oh yeah, if you make something for everyone, you've made something for no one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think largely because I mean I was the first person leading this parade of like, no, you shouldn't have to watch stuff to watch Ahsoka. That's literally what they've been telling us the whole time, and I found overwhelmingly from friends and family that was indeed true. You can enjoy it, and maybe you didn't get the depth of it, but these are enhancers. They are not the story, and so you can understand from context, from direct dialogue, that these been lost, haven't seen each other for a long time, and that she has lost her family and is pretty much isolated and alone when we get to the start, because she's focused on this. She sacrificed Ahsoka to have a chance to meet him. So when you meet, they've given you the context, but it's still not going to be the same as those who watch Rebels, which is also not going to be the same as those who have been reading the books surrounding it. You know what I mean? Rebels even hits differently, having read the Rebels prequel book. Now I can't remember what it's called. It starts with A. A New Dawn.
Yeah, A New Dawn. Yeah.
I can picture Count Vidian running around being a dick. And like,
or just I think it wasn't one of my favorite books, but I did think it was really cool to see the evolution of Kanan, who we see in Rebels, to like who he was years before or like as he was meeting Hera, and the evolution of just how much he changed as a person. Really cool to get that backstory.
Yeah. Well, even before that, we get Kanan the Last Padawan comic, and we get to see like the lessons that Depa Billaba was instilling in him, that ultimately, when he came back to his way as a Jedi in Rebels, leads to where he ends of just being like the ultimate Chad. And so all this stuff is additive. It's not required, and that's the thing I really wish I could stress to people. There was he took it down because I called him out on it, but there was a larger content creator who made a whole video that was like, if you don't watch all of this stuff, I don't want you watching Ahsoka. And you're like, why don't you want people watching it? We want people to watch. Don't you want to get a season 2? The more people watch it, the better. Like, what are we doing here? Have we hit the other side of gatekeeping? And that's what I felt. That's what I mostly felt of like. This is just gatekeeping. That's a gate. You have to do this before you can get in. That is gatekeeping, And so, I do hope that the Acolyte does get people into the High Republic, because it's an awesome place in the fandom. I also really love that the High Republic has been such a safe place within the fandom, because that most of the toxic people can't read an entire book. That takes way too much dedication. So it's been a safe haven. And so by the time they make the live action product, we've been living in this world for the past couple years. We've spent countless hours, reading into and theory crafting and all this stuff, so that when the hate starts, you already have a built-in audience that's like, nah, y'all dumb.
I think I did like a couple of months ago, when I was talking about the High Republic, I had a comment on my video that said, how can you be a fan of this stuff? It's garbage. And I'm like, have you read it? And it's like, yeah. It's like, so what books have you read and why are they bad? And the person responded, okay, I haven't, but I've watched some videos on it. And I'm like, listen,
That's not anything.
you can't say this stuff's garbage and just be like, well, I've watched videos on the High Republic. You've clearly watched videos that were like, man, this is like woke. This is the woke republic, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
like Choco said, you can't hate read it.
Yeah. It's like my favorite, one of my favorite Family Guy quotes. It's like, I read it in a book. Like, did you read it in a book?
Yeah.
Or was it nothing?
I also think part of it is like some type of subconscious overcorrection from the toxicity too, because I realize there's a lot in Ahsoka that is like spelled out for you, like for the people who have watched Rebels or whatnot. To the haters that complain about Sabine and her skills, like there's literally a line in there that from Ahsoka that says, your skill with weapons and combat come from your Mandalorian upbringing. And that should be the single most important line you can ever hear from a character that says, oh, she's good. Right? So when people complain about, you know, her uptake in deflecting blasters when she's been training for 10 years with Ahsoka and Kanan, it's mostly Ahsoka, but like when they complain that she can now deflect blasters like perfectly. First of all, not perfectly, but second of all, like she's a warrior. She has all these fundamentals.
You know who she is? She's Takumi. Right? Like, never raced before, but in a sense has way more experience than any of the other people on Mount Akima. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would argue she has more training than Ezra.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like in combat, in fundamentals, yes. Not more training in
In the
Jedi,
Force,
in the
aspect.
Force, yeah.
But
It's that
you know,
double standard that you see across so many different media components where some characters, it's okay if you don't see their training, but for a lot of the female ones especially, it's like, oh, I need to see all of it to believe it. And it's like, no, we don't, you know?
Yeah, one of the most famous Rey is a Mary Sue videos that we debunked, they started by saying they have not established her combat abilities. And like we literally pause it there and it's like that scene that you're showing, they're establishing it.
Yeah, they were showing Rey fighting the guys on Jakku, and she's like, see, she's beat them 3 guys, but they haven't established that she can fight. And you're like, that's what this is right now. This is the beginning of the movie. How were they supposed to establish it before?
The Rey is a Mary Sue thing drives me crazy because, to my understanding, the initial, like the very first conception of that term is a self-insert from an author. And when I look at George Lucas and Luke, it's like, that's closer to a Mary Sue than Rey is. So y'all need to brush up on what, not you guys, but like the people that are complaining, need to brush up on what the term actually is before you start just spewing it with hatred constantly. Because like in my eyes, she is not.
Well, I mean,
and you know,
I mean, by definition, she's not. But
in my recent video, it comes down to, like I said, people who have abandoned knowing things. Like they are willfully ignorant, you know.
Oh, you hear things somewhere once, and then you make that your headcanon of like, oh yeah, they said it, so it's true, and it's a large creator or whatever, but it's not what you actually see in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recently watched a video from Denzel Green who was responding to someone who was saying Rey is OP. And I had to comment that, you know, amongst the roster of Star Wars characters across the franchise, she's not even in the top 10 in terms of feats. Just, you know, if you take her feat of reflecting Palpatine's lightning, I mean, they have canonically in universe said that was the power of all the Jedi. But even then, Mace Windu has done that. So, then,
on his own.
Yeah, and then I come to the realization that so many people say Rey is a Marisu, she's overpowered, she never loses, but when it comes to those stupid ass videos where they say Prime Anakin versus Rey Skywalker, they don't have her winning. How can you be OP, never losing, and you don't have her winning that matchup?
Insert, this is outrageous.
I don't like her because she's OP, but then they're like, no, Dark Dimension Vader. And you're like, it's OP, but it's a good thing in that context. Like, yeah. I don't know what y'all want.
It's the same thing with like the love for Starkiller, right? Like,
yeah,
some people it's fine if they're OP, but then when it's a specific character, can't have it. Absolutely not.
Because it's fun to play the game when you're walking through as this OP person and you're tossing stormtroopers and stuff. But you're like, but you don't like that. You said, and that's why. I don't know. we know why it's viewed as different. Not everyone has the ability to self-reflect to understand. Like, oh, if you like it here and dislike it here, that means that it is not the true thing that you dislike.
Shout out to people in the chat on the YouTube side and on the TikTok side. Master James Kenobi, thank you for the heart me. On the YouTube side, we have Podcast of the Wills, Blue Eagle Gamer, Dex and Download. Connor's heading to Paris tomorrow. What?
Nice. So
yeah,
in Paris?
Right. It's like a 45-minute drive. I was like, wait, you're going to Paris?
Oh, okay.
It reminds me of that video of that guy that went viral who was like, I know why Americans are not are you think they're not well traveled, but they literally drive 2 hours and they're still in the same state.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's big. Yeah, I mean, like, I can fly to San Francisco and I'm still in the same state. So it is rather large. We also have my 2 credits in the chat. I'm just kidding. Rams How. We have Tate. Tate saying Team Zane. Hopefully Tate's still here. We love to talk about Ahsoka.
Oh man.
Worst drive I ever had though is well, actually there's 2 of them. My family, we drove to a family reunion. We rented a van and drove to a family reunion in Alabama.
We all wearing Rush shirts.
Yeah, it half of the drive was just in Texas, because you have to drive across Texas long ways, and that is not a short trip, Even more than that, when I moved from Portland back down to California, but Portland's at the top of Oregon, and I moved to Rancho Santa Margarita, which is pretty far south, and so that in and of itself, crossing one border was like a 19 to 20 hour drive.
Yeah,
it's not fun.
Also, in the vein of like EV like conversations, range anxiety is primarily in America because people have to get to work. It's not like, oh, I have range anxiety because I have to drive to like France from like London. It's like, no, people have families in the same state that are like 4 or 5 hours away. That's range anxiety. But let's move on to our first segment, which is lore, and that's our everything you know about Star Wars is wrong. So here we go. Everything you know about Star Wars is wrong. And this episode, Jedi do not kidnap children. Now, obviously, this is as simple as that statement, but we can go on forever about this topic. Choco, why does everybody think that the Jedi kidnap children?
Because Matt Pat said it in a video once. That has to be it. But like, where does it happen? Now, I've seen people, they start with that statement, and then once you ask them where has it happened, they get all wishy-washy. That's when they pick up the goalpost put it in a wagon and roll it down the street. They're like, well, okay, maybe they don't kidnap them, but they shouldn't be allowed to deal with kids. And it ends up being about different things. But like throughout Star Wars, we do see kids being kidnapped by the Sith, by the Empire,
Cad Bane,
by the First Order.
Yeah, definitely by Cad Bane. Yeah,
but never by the Jedi.
Yeah, there's absolutely zero stories in canon or legends of the Jedi kidnapping children. The closest you can get is one story from a one-shot in Legends where, after a natural disaster, the Jedi had taken in a child. And the parents actually survived and had come back to claim the child. And the Jedi had taken them to court to prove that they were the actual parents. But that's due diligence. That's not them being like, no, you can't have your child back. Like, this is our child now. Now, we can
There's
go...
also... So the other thing is they were accused of being kidnappers by the Goyans.
Mhm.
And because of that, and that's a line in the Clone Wars. But when they were accused of that, the Jedi were like, oh, never mind. We won't induct anyone from this society into the Jedi Order anymore. So you're like, obviously you're not getting kidnapped because permission is not really needed if you're a kidnapper,
Mhm.
And even recently in the book The Living Force, we actually got some more confirmation that the Jedi absolutely do not kidnap and so not only do the Jedi not kidnap any kids, but they also make sure that inducting the kid into the Jedi Order is not going to put undue stress on the families that it was going through, and they also make preparations for those families in that event. And if the Jedi does not do that, they get in big trouble, and they are just not allowed to to do that part of the process ever again.
Yep.
Like, at best you can say that they put the onus on the family to like say no. At best you can say that, but for the most part it's always like it's consented to. Like, yeah, you can take, and maybe they don't want to do it, but they realize the greater good of it all, and so they do. But that's like the worst thing that you can say. That it's hard to see your child go. That's the worst thing you can say.
Now, it's identical to Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, where these people will have powers. People are afraid of them. People don't know how to raise them. Their society views them as outcasts, or they could be a danger to themselves or others. But it's never forcibly done. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
the tougher one would be like the Chiss, when they take a young Skywalker basically, and the family, like, you have to forget everything. That's way harder for a pill to swallow than what the Jedi do.
It's easier for them to swallow because they don't remember, but
Sure, but like in the moment, right? Like,
I got you.
Yeah, I mean, I received a comment on on a video that I was doing on Jedi kidnapping children, and one of them said, well, Obi-Wan said he was taken when he was a child. And I like semantics. Like, you can be picked up by your uncle and taken to school. Like, he was not literally taken.
I took my wife out to dinner last night. Like,
took her?
She was aware. She was taken. Oh, call Liam Neeson. Qui-Gon. I don't know. It's a dumb argument.
Yeah. Now
there is another argument I've seen of, well, the kid can't consent to being taken.
That's a different conversation.
That's a whole
entirely.
different conversation, because it would be, the onus would be on the guardian of the child to decide what's best for the child.
Mm-hmm. And
otherwise, any orphanage in the States is just like a kidnapping farm. What are you supposed to do?
Also, you're allowed to leave the Jedi Order no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
We also have in-universe, live-action context to this. Anakin was 9 years old. He had agency. And his mother asked him, "Is this something you want to do?" And Anakin said, "I want to do this." And so we have that context in which someone is old enough to make that decision. The parent is giving their permission, but also asking the child, "Is this something you want to do?" And the child says, "I want to do this." And then they, I hate to say this, take Anakin to the Jedi Temple. And even Anakin's mother is like, "You let go. Don't look back." So yes, we can have a conversation as to whether or not they should be taken at that young age. They should forego agency of the child and their choice. Should it all be on the parent? That's a different conversation. But at the end of the day, the Jedi do not kidnap children. That's that. All right.
I did have sorry, there's just one last thing I want to add in. I don't know, you can chop it up and put it back in, but
Yeah.
I did have someone say, prove it. Prove that the Jedi don't kidnap children. And to that I say, how? Like, prove that they do. You can't prove a negative.
Yeah.
I can show you all the examples where they set the rules, or show every time that there is a kidnapping, it's not the Jedi doing it. I can show you all that stuff, but I can't prove to you they don't, because that's a negative. You have to show that they do.
And
Yep.
to your point of like the ability to leave the order, the only one that I am aware of would be the Lost 20, which is something that we learn about. It's not in live action, but we learn about them in the Count Dooku book, where you have these Jedi who have renounced the order and they've left. I believe they've all been masters, and this will link into the High Republic in just a moment. But you are free to leave. It's sad and unfortunate for the order, but they're not going to hold you against the rule. Like, if you don't want to be a part of something or you don't believe it anymore, what are they going to do? Like, why would you want someone in something that they no longer feel a part of or believe in? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. We have Iskat's mother, who also couldn't hold up to muster, and they let her go back to home. We also have Kentum Sai, who left, and that was it. Came back, but left.
Keep trying to.
Yeah,
We'll see. We have to see how it happens. But
right.
Jedi Apprentice was part of
Comac left.
Yeah.
What I'm interested about with Keith's story is the fact that Kevin Scott, who, if the viewers don't know who he is, he wrote some of the High Republic books. He also wrote the Count Dooku book. That book came out before all the High Republic stuff. Mm-hmm. So I have to think that he has Keith's story written out like this whole time, which I'm really excited for, because to me, he knows her endpoint and you can build towards it, or he has it all written out. So we know she leaves at some point. I imagine we'll learn a lot more of that during phase 3 as we kind of get into things, especially with the current comic arc, and then probably with the Tempest Breaker audiobook that comes, I think, later at the end of this year. That's
just going to be a heartbreaker. But yeah, in an interview that he did with Alex, Star Wars Explained, he actually talks about, he was actually the first that was approached to be part of Project Luminous.
Oh, cool.
And that was while he was writing that book. So he filled that book with Easter eggs from the things that he was planning. And some of them will pan out, some of them didn't. You'll notice that they arrive on the planet when he's a kid in the Ataraxia. And there's a few things. Also, the Lost 20 thing is not a late addition. That was also seen in the deleted scenes from Attack of the Clones.
Awesome.
I did not know that.
Let's go to the chat really quickly. Connor says, so I'm going to Paris to meet with a Lucasfilm publisher in regards to my short story fan fiction, but that's generally all I can say. Congratulations, Connor. That's exciting.
That's
Very
dope.
exciting. Yeah.
Let us know how that goes. Blue Eagle Gamer says, what was the Jedi Order like with family contact? Is that ever talked about? So,
Yes. Yeah, it was talked about. You, the thing you have to understand is that it is. I mean that the family contact was definitely frowned upon, but usually those bonds hadn't been created, but when the person joined the Jedi Order, and so while you would have connections, it wouldn't be the same. You know what I mean? Like if you were not raised by this person, you wouldn't quite have the same connect. And this was also explored more in Legends. I think it can think of specifically Darth Maul Shadowhunter. There's a person whose child was inducted into the Jedi Order. They did get to meet with them, but to the person who had grown up in the Jedi Order, the Jedi is their family. And so this is a person, and you're like, yes, this was my birth person. It's not quite the same. Their connection is really to the Order.
Yeah. I mean, and we have this example with Anakin. It's why they say he's too old. His thoughts linger on his mother. This is exactly why. It's and that's like, again, it relates to our conversation as to whether or not the decision should wholly be on the parent. Should the child have a decision or a say in it? But largely, they start training from infancy so that they do not have those pre attachments. They don't have those attachments going into the training. So the Jedi is their family, like Choco said, and there's very little stories about people wanting to like reconnect with their family. I mean, even Satele Shan gave up Theron, like, to avoid that, to be trained by someone else and not be brought up as her son. But there's stories of them meeting and stuff, and it's certainly the family reunion. But yeah, there was no kind of like stories that and to that point prove that the Jedi don't forbid them from seeing their family. It's like they kind of put the onus on you, and I use Dooku as an example. He wanted to go back, so he left the Order. If you want to reconnect, leave the Order. You know what I mean? But there was hardly any Jedi raised as an infant that would have anything to go back to.
Yeah, I think the Jedi Order is looked at too much as or looked at as only a religion, which it's also it's mainly an occupation, right? It's like being a samurai, and it's an occupation and a tradition more than it is a religion. I wish we had more stories about people who left the Jedi Order, because that was not uncommon. We have the Lost 20, but the Lost 20 were masters. There were people who were Padawans who didn't progress to being a knight, who got different jobs and did different things, or people who left. Obi-Wan had a friend who just left one night. In the Dooku book, you actually did have someone who was on the council who, was a Jedi, had a child that was Force sensitive, but the attachment to the child led to them overlooking the mistakes that the child was making, which led to a bunch of problems and a lot of people dying. So I don't know. There's it's a thing.
Yeah, Connor, I agree with Zane. Edge of balance. Blue Eagle Gamer says, with the Rey movie, perhaps we will see Jedi who join the Order later in life. Yeah, and that's certainly a subject that I would like for them to explore. Maybe Rey is not focusing on infants or children, but rather kind of reaching out to people who are in the middle of their life. They're having a crisis of faith, maybe. That would certainly give us a lot more impactful stories when it comes to the training, because then, like, as we saw in The Last Jedi with Kylo Ren, it's like how do we deal with people who have mountains of attachments already? You know, even though he's trained from a young age, he knew his parents, and then he's training under his uncle. So, like, with Rey's New Jedi Order, I hope that we explore the training of people who have built up all these attachments and are adults and can have adult emotions, and see how Rey responds to that, see how the Jedi respond to those feelings moving forward.
Do you think attachment was partially what led to Ben's downfall? And I say that in the case where Luke noticed the darkness in Ben much earlier and had been seeing it throughout his training. Do you think he was given the benefit of the doubt because he was related, because he had that mighty Skywalker blood?
Well, how much do you put on it, on Luke, of going with the old way of like, hey, no attachments, and so therefore I'm starting to sense something, so I'm gonna squash it? Because like, if you look at the Order, it's just repeating through a lot of time, like repeating the same mistakes and not evolving in their way of thinking at all. So I put some of that towards that too. Well,
so I think people misinterpret the fall of the Jedi with attachment. It wasn't non-attachment that was responsible for the Jedi's eventual fall. It was their hubris with non-attachment. Now, non-attachment is healthy for a Force user, right? And that's not saying you can't create an attachment or you can't be cognizant of one, but you must be able to let go before that attachment or possession turns into emotions that then control your forward moving actions, right?
I will
Which was
say,
also discussed in the Daniel Jose Older book,
Midnight Horizon.
Yes, in there, but also the previous one as well at the very beginning.
Race to Crash Point.
Yes, the beginning of Race to Crash Point Tower. That's when that's when Vernestra. The question was, I feel like I'm a ball of attachments to everyone, and then the question was asked, well, if they were in trouble, what would you do to save them? Like, well, do anything. Like, okay, well, what if someone who you aren't friends with was in trouble? Like, well, yeah, I would do anything to save them as well. Third question was, if saving them meant you would never be able to see them again, would you still do it? She said yes. I was like, then that's not an attachment. And I think that's the point, is the attachment isn't the friendship, it's not the relationship, it's when it's actually attached, when you're unable to let go of it. That's when it can become a problem. And I think of like Luke with Grogu. I've seen a lot of people say he was repeating the mistakes of the Jedi Order, and I disagree. And even Dave Filoni came out and said this, like, no, this was what Qui-Gon would have done, where he gave the child a choice of where he wanted to be, of where his heart was. It would actually be more like the problematic Jedi to force this child to be a Jedi when his heart wanted to go back and be with his newfound father.
Yeah.
The interesting thing for me is that the High Republic covers the aspect of attachment so much, and I'll say that the upcoming book covers that as well. Interesting to see the perceived change in like how the audience reacts to the Jedi's approach of attachment as you get into the prequels and later on. And that's what I find so interesting about when we're going to get to see the Acolyte, is that transition of the Order from what they were in the High Republic to kind of what becomes of them in the prequels. Part of it spurned on by, wartime and just not being able to catch your breath with everything going on. But part of it is just kind of becoming just more than what you were intended to be,
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think the short story, I feel like I talk about it every week, the short story of Barriss Offee and the stories of Jedi and Sith, I think that marks it the best, where she's like, I'm here because I want to be a healer, and I'm seeing all these Jedi come back from this battle of Geonosis, like, broken internally. Like, I can help them heal their wounds, but they're carrying these scars inside that I can't fix. And the Order's stance on it is largely, we have to go out of our comfort zone, but if we hit this problem hard enough and fast enough, then we won't have to deal with it anymore, right? So you go out of your way, do things that you wouldn't normally do because you think it's the necessary evil, and then when you have Palpatine on the other side intentionally prolonging it, then yeah, that gets to be problematic.
Yeah, the entire argument or debate on attachment or non-attachment comes down to the trolley problem for me, and I've always kind of put this forth. You know, would you be able to save a busload of innocent people if your friend was on the other side? Would you save your friend, or would you save the entire busload of people? And that's the quandary that a lot of Jedi have to face. But that's why the High Republic is my favorite era in canon, is because, and I say in canon because the Old Republic is still my favorite in Legends, is they take all of these notions and these misconceptions about the Jedi from the prequels, and they turn it on its head. Even though emotion is explicitly spelled out for us by Anakin, it's inundated with, oh, he's just flirting. But he is absolutely correct when he says, compassion, unconditional love. We're encouraged to do all those things, but possession, attachment is forbidden. As in, you cannot put your emotions over, your duty to, be saving everyone. And you can't save everyone, but like, if you it would be selfish. It would be dark side to put the life of someone that you're attached to over the life of like 100 people in a bus,
Or the entire galaxy if you're Anakin and you just burn it to the ground. I love Depa Balaba's quote from Kanan the Last Padawan. She says, "You must not grow too attached, too fond, too in love with life as it is now. Those emotions are valuable and should not be suppressed. But you must learn to rule them, Padawan, lest they rule you."
Yes. I love that quote as well. And I also, love the quote from A Test of Courage with Vernestra, when it says, "We'll bring these people to justice," but what that justice looks like, we can't decide. We can't fall to revenge or vengeance. We can't put our own attachment to this conflict into your duty as a Jedi to bring them in and to let due process take its course. And also when she says the path to the dark side is a deliberate one.
That's what I think of real world parallels, right? Because the Jedi are based off of Eastern religion, right? And detachment is Buddhist, right? That's a very, very common Buddhist practice now in our life. And it's not harmful, it's not negative, it's not, you know what I mean? That's because we connected. Versus the other side, when obviously it's not a political podcast at all, but you'll see when 9/11 happened and then the US just bombed everyone. And you're like, they're not even over there. That's the wrong country. And I don't know. We're just mad, and that's the US had big feelings there.
Yeah. Zane, what are your thoughts on attachment? Do you think that is a bad thing for the Jedi?
I think the biggest like live action thing that I can think of that just defines it so much is in Attack of the Clones when Obi-Wan is reprimanding basically Anakin, being like, she would tell you to do what? And he's like, oh, I gotta do my duty. I can't put this person ahead of what I'm supposed to do. And you have to be able to put your personal feelings aside to look at the big picture of what your actual job is, right? Like your job is a Jedi, right? That's your occupation, if you want to call it that. And once your personal feelings start getting into the way, that's when attachment becomes a problem. And that's for anyone in any kind of public service role, whether you're an elected official or anything, right? You have to be able to separate your wants and needs from your job, which is the good of the people.
Yeah. One thing I like to call back to. Oh, I'll wait to get him back to kind of say this, but Daxon in the chat says also a happy birthday for Ray Stevenson. Balin is gonna help really shake up the future of Star Wars. I
certainly hope so.
I'm really excited and hope that they continue his story and don't kind of leave it, or let it go by the wayside simply because they can't really get him back. But I really think they should recast and continue his story. Welcome back, Zane.
I don't know what happened there.
You are in the middle of a thought.
No, I was good. I don't know what happened. I just got cut out. But that's okay.
So I was actually gonna bring up this as well as it pertains to attachment. But I want people to think about Batman.
Okay.
Particularly,
I always think about Batman.
particularly the dilemma of Harvey versus Rachel.
That's attachment. That's attachment.
Yeah. Who does he go first, and what happens?
Right.
And saying you're muted. I can't hear you. Can you hear him?
I can hear him. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I
Zane,
can't hear Choco's audio.
No, don't worry, Zane. I'll back out and come back in.
We'll do it live. We'll fix it live. Then this is yours. You good?
I mean,
Yep.
maybe.
Yep.
Hey, I can
Yep.
hear you again.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right, let me see if I can't fix this label. Does that work? No. Well, that's my 2 credits. I don't know why the label disappeared, but okay. So I was in the middle of the Batman's choice between Rachel and Harvey. Zane had said that's definitely attachment, and I asked, when given the choice to save either, who does Batman choose, and what happens as a result? He chooses Rachel, but obviously Joker was lying about where she was, and then so I think that's a very potent lesson in kind of attachment. Is sometimes it's going to drive your actions. It's going to make you do it's going to make you make a mistake, and that was a mistake from Batman.
And the reason why I do like to stress of it as a vocation or as a calling rather than a religion is because we have the example of Obi-Wan, who, if Satine had asked, would leave the Jedi Order and just be with her. Right? He wouldn't try to do both. because you can't half-ass two things. You have to whole-ass one thing.
Yes.
To quote Ron Swanson. But yeah, there would be nothing wrong with him falling in love and then wanting to be with her. But if he knew he wouldn't be able to put the galaxy over his own needs, which, you know, if you marry someone, you gotta put their needs first, you know. You can't just be gone for months or years at a time and that sort of thing. Then yeah, he would have left the order and just been with her, and the Jedi would have been fine with that. They would have let him go.
Although I argue if anybody could do it, it would be Obi-Wan, because that guy has the will of an iron giant. Like, if they were like off in a farm somewhere enjoying married life, and something came up and like they needed Obi-Wan, he would have been like, I have to go. And Satine would be like, go. Like, Satine would understand and let him go, and Obi-Wan would be able to go and do his job and come back like, all right, off date, work. Sorry about that. So, I mean, yeah. Obi-Wan is just like, I made the video like 3 years ago. Obi-Wan is stronger than anybody we've ever seen in Star Wars in terms of like the amount he's lost and how he's never dipped at all. I mean, in the novelization, he did go to the dark side to beat Maul, but he was a Padawan, and then he learned his lesson, and you know, he was able to let go of Satine. So this was part and parcel, or this is kind of like a mixture of the High Republic and kind of like the Skywalker saga in general, but just to kind of round this out with the High Republic rewind, Zane, what are your top three High Republic stories overall? You don't have to like name books or anything, but just kind of an overall narrative, that the top three that resonated with you from phase 1 and phase 2.
So I think the biggest part when I think of the High Republic and what makes it so underrated is when I look at a lot of the canon books that are coming out, they're already in part of the established universe. And so the authors, I think, don't have a ton of creative control with like what you can do with characters. There's limitations. And so a lot of the time, there isn't a like grave danger or threat. You know what the outcome of most things is going to be. When you have the High Republic, you have a blank canvas. You can really do whatever you want. And that helps you shape so much of the world. And that is really what made me like sold on that part of the story and get immersed into it. No one is safe, and you cover a lot of things in the past. So I quite enjoyed the opener, Light of the Jedi. It is not for everyone because it is blank canvas, as I said, and there's just so much new information being thrown at you that unless you are paying like undivided attention to that book, you will get lost in that story because there's so much going on. Yeah. And to the point where like, even if you're into audiobooks, which again, nothing wrong with that, but if you're into audiobooks, you can't be doing other things because there's so many names being thrown out at you that you'll just get lost. But for me, I really loved the way they set things up in that story. I remember when I first started reading about the High Republic, I was curious if the Nihil would have like a tie to Darth Nihilus. It's not going to be the case. But I remember that was my first thoughts.
All of the worlds.
Yeah, when it first came out, and I was reading, I was like, oh, I wonder if like that's what they're gonna do. Nope, doesn't seem like it. But Markion is just a fascinating character. Really enjoying that. I personally have really enjoyed phase 1 the most so far. I didn't feel as attached to phase 2, but I did love Cataclysm by Lydia Kang. Phenomenal story. And we also get Yaddle in it, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And then to round things out, I guess I don't want to go into phase 3. So I will say I really enjoyed The Rising Storm. All of those books, the ones that I've mentioned, I have like my own grading system for how I read my books and like tier them out. So all of those made it to my S tier on Star Wars books that I've read. And all three of those stories are absolutely phenomenal stories.
I mean, I have to agree. So Light of the Jedi, like I said, I read it in 3.5 hours, and I had my review on day one, and because that was like, that was it. That was the day High Republic began. And in particular, two of the things in Light of the Jedi that kind of just made me emotional was in the first 8 chapters when Avar comes out the first time, says, "This is Avar, Jedi Master Avar Chris. We're here to help." And I'm like, oh yeah, it's going down. The second one is when a space station has been hit by an emergence, and that one dude stayed behind. And I don't know how he wrote it so potently, but when it said, "We are all the," and then there was a hyphen, I'm like, what? I started tearing up because that was such a emotional kind of thing to read in the midst of this great disaster that's happening. And like you said, nobody was safe and people were like falling left and right. And I would read about like Tiami and the people that were in the sky flying with Boryaga and trying to, take out the small debris and stuff. And then I'm like, oh, Tiami's gonna be awesome moving forward. She dies, and I'm like, come on. I just read about this person. God.
Well,
it started out with Hedda Cassett.
Yes,
okay,
exactly. Yeah.
Tough lady truck driver. There's no nonsense. She's gonna get things. No.
Yeah. I also really appreciate like the way that they visualize the Force. You learn from the High Republic that every Jedi sees the Force differently. So for Avar, it's a song. Elzar, it's the ocean. Burry, it's like a leaf on a tree. Bell is fire. Loden is wind. And that concept is stunning in my mind. And then on the flip side of that, you also have, I'm losing my train of thought where I was going with that, but like there's just for the Legends enthusiasts, my understanding is that the ability to link together is from Legends. That's a power from Legends. Am I correct in that?
Yes. Yeah,
yeah.
Battle concentration.
The meld, right? Battle meld, is that what it is? I think something like that. That concept. So you're getting a bit of everything, like old and new.
Avar's song is not explicitly labeled as battle meditation.
No. Like the ability for Jedi to, like how Avar can connect to people, how she does on Hetzal, so that everyone can kind of combine in a sense. That concept, I think, is from Legends, which is what was called Battle Meld.
Yeah.
It's not that. Yeah, they didn't explicitly give it the same name, but it's definitely the same technique, and it's very much inspired.
But I forget which book it was, but they did actually confirm.
They didn't explicitly call it that.
They did confirm there was a form of battle meditation in the Battle of Kur.
Yeah.
So while Avar's kind of network or song linking people together wasn't explicitly called that, you could say that's the same thing in concept. I absolutely love that as well. And I think my favorite is Astala Maru, who sees it as a night sky. It's kind of like the same thing as back then when we were talking about the High Republic and how we view the Force. Mine was always a game engine where I see quads and blocks and just kind of entire worlds built on these primitives that would eventually gained their texture, you know, but as the Force itself, I see it in their deconstructed primitives, and then I have my tool, my gizmo, a transformation tool. If I want to move a box or a polygon to the left, I would grab that. I would grab the X or the Y and the Z, and I would, by the Force, do that. But that's how I see it, right? So I don't know if it's changed for Choco, but Zane, given the topic at hand, how do you see the Force?
and
Choco could go if you want to
go while you're while you're thinking of it, to give you some more time. But no, my answer has stayed the same. It may have been tweaked slightly, but you know, I still very much see it as music myself. You know, I am a musician, have been for a very long time, but I can see it as a harmony, and you can make it increase in intensity. You can make it like, depending on what a situation would need. You know, I can feel, you know, adding vibrato in there, and I can feel adding more bass. So it would be like an kind of like an orchestra if I were the conductor. And yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Show and tell. So I see it as Legos. It's like a puzzle.
Nice.
Right? And the idea is that there's different colors for pieces. There's different lengths for pieces, right? If I can show here, actually, there we go. And every piece has a different purpose. And it all fits into a puzzle to create one creation, and it can always be a different creation. But for me, I think that's how I would see it.
Follow up. What is happening in the Force when you step on a Lego?
You fall to the dark side.
Makes sense. Choco, another follow up for you for in the music sense. How would a Force push look for you if you were to perform it with a tremolo or a staccato?
That's when you get the timpanis going. You know what I mean? That you get some percussive hits. Yeah. No, I think that would do it.
That was a phenomenal question, by the way. Just love it.
I you know what? I love to see how people view, I mean, the world in general too. I mean, like,
that question is what made us friends with Cal 4 originally. Is we did a podcast when the book first came out. You know, it was back on the high ground, and so his answer was similar to mine, but yeah. After that, it was like, hey man, you should message me. You know?
Yeah. My thoughts go back to August Rush. Have you ever seen August Rush?
I have not.
Have you, Choco?
No.
Oh no. It's about a boy who hears music in every single sound that's made in the world, and his final composition is a mixture of worldly sounds, like the wind blowing, sirens, the gas from a vent in a street. Like it's like he turns the noise of walking down New York City into a composition. And it's such a fascinating thing to think about, and that's how I kind of imagine when people say I see the Force as music, is like seeing all of these sounds, and like the Force is like the way the Force has been visualized in Star Wars and live action is this luminous green-ish type of like thing, right? I think we saw it in Grogu. We saw it in Mandalorian. We saw it in Grogu in the Mandalorian. But if it were to be someone who views it as a song or views it as music, you would be everything in the Force. All of the living things would be all of these sounds that you could articulate into something that is musically complementary. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you know, because because the main reason I see the Force like this is because I do largely see the world like this as well. Is everyone, each individual would also have their own song. But some people's songs are in harmony with yours, some are not. I would see if you did a Jedi mind trick, that would be something like you see someone's song composition, and then maybe you add dissonance for them, to disrupt what they're doing, or you add a minor key bass line and it augments their song so that they're put into like a state that is altered so that you can make your suggestions or whatnot. And then in the case of people getting together to accomplish one goal, that's when all of your songs link up.
Oh my
they're all
gosh.
the same key.
You're basically an anime. So let's say you let's say you're walking down the street in San Diego, right? And you're enjoying this pleasant melody of the Force. If someone trying to mess with you or step up to you, do you suddenly hear villainous discordant melodies like just like dun 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 dun, and you're like, oh no, there he is.
Not villainous. It would be like a sounding brass, like an obnoxious disrupting just noise, right? Barely even music. This is how I see it.
Well, yeah, it kind of like relates to us attributing all of the hate and the toxicity as noise.
They sound like Charlie Brown's parents.
I sound like BB-8. I don't know. That wasn't Charlie Brown's parents. Connor, I would delete those statements if you want to keep that as in stream only. I don't know if you want.
People can go back and read that stuff, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations, but if this info is in confidence, you're allowed to share it in stream, but by virtue of it being on stream, it is now on the internet forever. It's not exactly an insulated broadcast.
Likelihood versus security, yeah.
But the third story is kind of, it relates to Zane, one of Zane's favorites, and that's it's a mishmash of Fontu, Ziri, and Axel and Gela. That entire narrative redeemed phase 2 for me. Like it's not that I can care less about like the origins of the Nameless and like the setup with which the path has led to Markion. It's the fact that those narratives were so much more potent. And I know there are people out there who wanted the Forever War to take more of a center stage, but I do think the story wasn't about the Forever War. And we can have a discussion on this because we love civil discourse, but like I feel like the story was about the generation that wanted to stop it, right? So It was about Fontu and Ziri getting over their inbuilt or inherited hostilities or their prejudices to see each other. And it was the same with Gela and Axel, but it was kind of like it was more like a rush hour relationship. You know, like
I'm just picturing-
Gela just like, it's like, listen to me and stop being a dick. And then Axel's like, you go this way, I go that way.
I just like that with Siri and Fontoon, they were able to get through like generations of trauma to realize like, oh, they're hot.
Yeah. Yes. I think one of the jokes I say is like, they so you are gonna betray me this whole time, and then Fontu is like, shut up and kiss me, and then then they do that.
And then he goes, scorpions. And
But what were your top three, Choco?
I mean, this feels like it's going to be a similar list, you know, because I do love Light of the Jedi. I am one of the people that struggled with it at first. So I basically read it. Here's what I did. We read, because they released the first 8 chapters early. So we read through the first 8 chapters, then got the book, read 25% of it, got to a part where I was like, what's happening? And I started over. But I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I thought it was a fantastic way to introduce us to the universe. I feel like Star Wars in general has been doing a really good job of first episodes of things to introduce the world, the players, the conflict. You know, and in this case, the fact that it's a meat grinder and everyone's gonna die. Everyone you love might die. So yeah. My favorite is still Rising Storm. You know, that book took me through emotions.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Also, Bel Zettifar is my dude. There was one, you know, scene in there that definitely gave me a gut punch. If you know what part. And yeah, just some interesting scenes. You know, my favorite line in that book is an Elzar man comes riding in on a dragon, because of course he does. And then I also I love Into the Dark, right? That also gave us so much. The introduction to the vessel crew.
Geo.
I'm still we got the great Geode stuff, and you got to see another side of the Nile in that book of how ruthless they are, but how they can masquerade and be whatever they want. Also got the introduction of the Drengir in that. We got some love for the Amaxine warriors, right? The Amaxine station, which we had also seen Snoke living on. That was pretty dope. Midnight Horizon as well. I actually struggled with the start of that book, but somehow it came together in an oddly beautiful fashion.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you just end it with just warm fuzzies, you know? But I legitimately didn't like the book in the beginning. Like, it starts on Corellia, the Grendelin stuff. I didn't like it at all. And then, like, by the end of it, I'm just like, oh.
I'm gonna have to give that one another shot, because I remember not really enjoying that one at all. I will say I forgot to mention one of my favorite Phase 2 projects, which was The Blade. So much lore being dropped in there with the Barash Vow. That was just incredible.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Yeah, makes me believe Plo is on one right now. You know? So is Quinlan, for God's sakes. Give me more Quinlan. Like, Jesus.
I feel like they have to be saving Quinlan for something really big. I really thought
that.
I really thought we would have seen him in something else by now, but just the fact that we finally got a name drop, I don't know. There has to be some big vision for him, and especially now with the Ventress stuff. Soon, I hope.
Hopefully. Honorable
and
mention
young.
to
Yes, we need more Ember. If anything happens to Ember, I will burn this city to the ground. There's been times
We
in the
will
High
burn.
Republic where you're just like, you better not come for the dog. Like, you don't even
honorable
know.
mention to Elzar's story about his darkness and being helped by Orla Journey, which brings me to your top 5 characters in the High Republic. I say characters because Jedi is a little bit limiting. So, Zane, who are your top 5 characters in the High Republic?
Well, Choco knows Choco knows I'm gonna say Avar right off the bat. We had a brief conversation about this.
We
So
love
Avar
Katie
for
lots.
sure. Avar for sure. I really have been intrigued with Keeve and Skier. Skier especially just because of the McGrock syndrome. That has been really interesting, and then to see kind of the maybe lasting effects of that.
Didn't Mr. Freeze's wife have that?
I just think of like McGrock orcs in World of Warcraft. So
Loktar
yeah. Let's see. Despite what Young says, I actually do quite enjoy Markion. Daddy issues and all. And then for number 5, I'll go with Porter, just because Porter's just such a badass.
Yeah.
Nice. I have to
But as
agree.
Choco said, like only 5, like anyone could have gone on the list. Stellan, Elzar, like there's
I
so many
mean,
characters.
we gotta have a ceiling somewhere, otherwise
Right,
we could just go
right.
on for hours.
Right.
I have to agree with Markion. Super intriguing, super interesting villain. You know, I think I fell in love with Markion as a villain in Light of the Jedi when he calls in that family in Elfrona, and then they're like, "We need your help," and then they go to help him, and then you know he starts talking to Loden, and he's like, "Do you recognize my voice?" And I'm just like, "Oh, he set
shit.
that up," and I was
Yeah.
like, "That's the guy. That's the guy." So number 1 has to be Vernestra for me. I think what she goes through, having lost, being one of the youngest, of course, it's kind of mirroring kind of Anakin's trajectory in terms of being a knight so young. Even though Anakin was kind of like the knighting was kind of forced due to the Clone Wars in general, but like how much she has to take care of like these, like I love Test of Courage, and it's just she loses her master and has to take care of all of these kids, and as she is number 1 suffering from this kind of this cosmic hyperspace thing, she's dealing with loss and she's dealing with darkness and stuff. She also has to deal with another Padawan's darkness, and it's her coming out of that situation, teaching that Padawan as well as herself at the same time, that really like draws me to her story. And I can't wait for her in the Acolyte, because we haven't even talked about the Acolyte. And then we have Orla Jareni, Miss Pristine Robes.
God, I forgot about Orla. What's wrong with me?
And then we have Elzar. My boy Elzar just going to town, painting the town red, and just kind of coming back with a lady on each hand or lady on each arm, and also serving as the cautionary tale for Anakin. You know, it's like, this was the solution. Just go to somebody and say, I need help. Like, the darkness is hugging me and it's scaring me. Somebody do something. And then I was floating between Porter and Avar, but like Avar does some pretty badass stuff in Eye of Darkness. So I gotta give it to her with her song and making it rain with like you said, there's a lot of characters, but I feel like we gotta make some concessions and and solidify some choices. So Avar, Elzar, Vernestra, Markion. I thought I had 5. I'm gonna go with Boryaga. I noticed they're all Jedi. God damn it! I am so basic. No, what? No. I'm gonna go with.
No, you had Markion in there.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you're good.
No, but Boryaga seemed like a reach for the skies type of like what's my 5th. But I think I'm gonna give it to Leox.
Okay.
Choco. Now you're just gonna have to think about all the characters in general. There's Drew.
Imagine if this had been a draft that you could only like go in order picking one, and if someone had picked them, you couldn't go again.
I mean, like in general. Young says Ember counts as a favorite, and so my list completely changed when I think of Remy. I think of
Remy is cool.
Matari and Voru. I think of all of the animals. I think of Zelen Graf's couch dog. So the list is different for people with animals for sure. But go ahead, Choco.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna start out with Bell, because I just
That's your dude.
Bell is my dude. Bell and Wreath both,
Ooh,
because I see myself so much in both of them.
Okay.
Especially when Wreath is like, I just want to go read books. Like, leave me alone.
Wreath is the number one argument to the Jedi raised soldiers. No, he just wants to read, and Ram just wants to fix things. Like,
I just want to build stuff, you know. The way, so the way that Vernestra's character shapes from being the overachieving, youngster, and then goes into, I guess I don't want to spoil a lot of Phase 3, but like, she's seen some stuff. She's been through some things.
Jackson said the nameless. You got your mind.
Kind of a dog.
Yeah.
But then you also have Emery, who's such a pure heart, and then what
Yeah.
happens with Emery's story in Phase 3, where he ends up, is also super cool. Oh my goodness, it's so hard. Then you have,
Jesus Comac.
some say Comac is still running.
Oh, I forgot about Zine too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Who's your top 10? I'm just kidding.
I do love. I mean, Markion is a villain. I don't know. He just has that weird frenetic energy. You don't know what he's up to, at any point. And then, what's her face? All right, y'all know that
Yes, Master What's Her Face.
y'all know that names will just sometimes fall out of my head.
I know.
So don't look at that as I don't actually love this character. But alongside Markion, we got introduced to our sharp-toothed Twi'lek queen, who you don't know what she's gonna do.
Lorna
If
D.
she's gonna,
Lorna
yeah,
D.
you don't know if Lorna's gonna kill you, if she's gonna kiss you,
Forgot.
if she's gonna, and Lorna is awesome.
I'm enjoying Lorna's story in the Phase 3 comics right now.
Yeah. So another character, and that's what the great thing is, how much these people turn and their story, they end up juxtaposed to where they started, or yeah, just everyone's just written to be so complex. I don't even know, is that 5 people? Because I mean, there's still a lot more, right? I didn't even mention Orla, or
You said Bell.
I'm doing the same thing where my list is just all Jedi.
You said Bell, Vernestra, Imri, Reith,
Lorna.
and
Yeah.
Markion. You just going down the list.
Uh,
Who are just amazing characters in general.
point
Geo.
is that there are a ton of phenomenal characters through all of the High Republic,
Absolutely.
and there's so much that you can do with all of them because they're not in anything else.
My love for name
Gela?
might be problematic. Though.
Axel, Fontu, Ziri, also. Like, my favorite stories, and I didn't name them.
Also, shout out to Lena Soto,
Lena,
who truly is like,
A competent chancellor.
yeah, just actually doing the right things and making the right moves despite all the opposition. It's interesting because so much of Star Wars has a corrupt leader in power, and that's the source of all of the issues. And this is not that case.
Well, I mean, in that case, shout out to Keong and Malo, the twin chancellors. I thought Malo was going to be that
working,
Quarren,
like trying to undermine it, you know?
the Quarren evil chancellor who's like, I want the part of myself. No, Malo was up and up. He was legit. He's supporting Keong. So shout out to them as well. I mean, man, there's so many. And also shout out to Geode, like I said, as proven by Sleepy Savior, aka Ren, the only Star Wars character you can find anywhere in the world and take a photo with. Like literally found a big boulder in Disneyland and was like, oh look, it's Geode, and they took a picture with it. And I'm just like, you know what, it works because it's a rock. What are you gonna do? But man, the High Republic, I truly hope that, and as we shift into Acolyte, and also wrapping up the episode, I truly hope that the High Republic has more stories to tell in live action and even in animation as well. I think after the Acolyte, there's going to be more people invested and interested in chasing down the High Republic stories. Because like I said, or like I say with most live action adaptations in general, the beauty is not in its ability to adapt to the source material. The ability is the beauty is in its ability to draw people to the source material. So as much as you would pan or dislike The Last Airbender on Netflix, it has its own charms, but it drew people to watch the cartoon, the original source material, and that'll always exist.
Real quick, there's a name I'm forgetting, and he was the main Jedi lead in the first book from Phase 2. I want to call him Zelen for some reason. Kevmo Zink.
Yeah, Kevmo Zink and Zalamakri.
Yes, I was mixing them together.
Kevzala.
I really enjoyed Kevmo.
Zavala.
And his Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. Oh, man, like ruined
Relax. Don't bring that up again.
Also, shout out to Arkoff and Lily Toriasi.
Yes. Yeah. There's so many. Oh my gosh. As I go up 2 octaves. Anyway, let's shift gears into the Acolyte. As I was saying, the Acolyte stands to make or draw a lot of people to the High Republic era. And we recently got some new details from Leslie Headland in speaking with Den of Geek, and where the inspirations for the Acolyte come from KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2, and chiefly Darth Treya.
Yeah.
And I'm like, did you just name drop Darth Treya in an interview? Like, you're gonna put some Legends purists on their butts because these people thought you didn't know your Star Wars. But
I've been having people say she doesn't know anything about it, and it's just a lie from Disney to make us think that she does. I feel like.
I want to point out also from the interview that, you know, she did mention or expound upon how she came to this story. And she does address that line from Ki-Adi-Mundi, like they are considered extinct, but she feels like there's a lot of knowledge of the Sith still out there that would be relevant. And, even, what's the word? Not time sensitive. That would be pertinent to the time. Yes, thank you. Because Qui-Gon immediately goes, my only conclusion that it could be a Sith Lord. And you're like, oh, well, okay, they've been extinct for a millennium. How could you conclude that really quickly? But also in the fact that Yoda says, the hard to see the dark side is. So there's a lot of like, y'all are being too presumptuous. I think that's my least favorite line from Mace Windu is, I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing. And then Yoda's like, you don't even know what this person next door had for lunch. How are you going to say the Sith couldn't have returned? So yeah, there's a lot of precedence there.
I still stand by the line personally, but listen, if I told you I got attacked by a Roman sentry, you'd be like, what? was it someone dressed like a Roman sentry? No, it was a Roman sentry. Like, that doesn't even make sense, you know? Like, I can see people being like, can we get some confirmation on that? You know what I mean? At that point, Qui-Gon had a 10-second run in, you know. A guy jumped off a bike and he fought him and then jumped on a ship and left and was like, the hell was that? Like, he's not watching a movie. That's all I'm saying. And then you heard about this 10-second encounter secondhand. I can see you being like, I'm going to need some more verification before we assume, you know?
That's why I say it's presumptuous of Mace to say that, especially the octave he starts that sentence in. I do not believe they could have returned.
Well, it goes back to our earlier comment about hubris, right?
Yes. Shout out to Captain Goofy Hunter for pointing out Ki-Adi-Mundi's statement is not a statement of fact. It's a statement made from hubris. It's like, oh, they've been extinct. I don't know what you're talking about. So, yeah, I mean, it's very likely that they've had run-ins with people like pretenders as well. There's also pretenders. There's people in the dark side.
There's people who collect stuff.
Well, I love the collective internet just meltdown of, it breaks canon, as if like Dagan Gera wasn't a Sith, but he had a red lightsaber. Like, come on, people! Like, let's get a little creative with what's going on before just jumping to conclusions.
It's also a misunderstanding of canon. You know what I mean? It's canon that he said that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
All
we have to go by is like 2 seconds of a trailer.
And the whole point was like we had already seen the Sith in the movie already.
Yeah.
It's time to reveal us. It's finally time to reveal ourselves.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the KOTOR inspiration. I made a video about this, but I want to know what your guys' thoughts on. Are you familiar with Darth Trejo or the Old Republic scene?
I am not familiar with the Old Republic outside of Revan a little bit, but I haven't played KOTOR and I haven't read the Legends books for Old Republic.
Gotcha.
They're on my list.
Choco, refresh him real quick.
Yeah, give me a little bit. Give me the exact summary.
I don't even know how to boil down because she's literally like the most complex character in the Star Wars. Daxadel says 3 hours later.
How much time you got?
Imagine if you were a Jedi and then you fell to the dark side and you became a Sith, but you ultimately ended up on the side that the cosmic force deciding people's fate is the actual problem.
Okay.
And so you're mostly at odds with the Force itself, and your ultimate conclusion. But fantastic character, very nuanced, very layered. Joins your party as Kreia, and then turns out to be like, I felt so betrayed. You know what I mean? Yeah, just a great character. And so I love seeing that. The thing that I love is seeing her love of nuance. You know what I mean? What she seems to love and be citing in all these isn't just person A looks tough, so I put him in, and this person has a whole lot of lightsabers, so I put him in. You know, it's there's a sort of love of the craft that makes me really excited.
This is years before any of this stuff, but I really want to see some Darth Xana stories.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's going to happen. I responded to a comment before, I think yesterday, of someone asking, do you think after the Acolyte we could see Darth Bane? And I'm just like, I feel like these stories are going to set precedents for all of these. You know, Tales of is a precedent to tell one-shot stories of anything, really. And I think Tales of the Sith is one of them. I think we can get the tale of Darth Bane and the Rule of Two. Maybe not his entire story, but we could get just like
Can
a
we get
glimpse
him
of it.
jumping at a pterodactyl out of atmosphere?
But yeah, I think and I want to throw it off to you guys as well. I think the inspiration of KOTOR and Master James Kenobi, shout out to him for the Zane Carrick name drop. But I feel like, I want to know what you guys think about this this inspiration and how it pertains to the Acolyte's story. What do you think is driving this inspiration with Darth Treya? Is it the Force itself? Like, what are the smaller or nuanced aspects of Darth Treya? And Choco, you can help Zane out here a little bit. That you think?
I mean, what
she's
jumps
taking.
right out is in the recent trailers we have lines from both Jodie Turner Smith, as well as Manny.
For me, it sounds like
Manny
the
just
power
said that.
line from the trailer.
Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
power and who's allowed to use it.
Yeah. Based on what you've told me, that's what I think of.
And Manny Jacinto says something similar in his brief line, and yeah, that's what I think we are exploring. Is it right? Who has the right to wield this much power?
Do you think there is any chance that we could possibly get a Treya name drop? Do you think any of Darth Treya, whether it's a manifesto or a holocron, do you think any of that could possibly be in the show? Because a lot of people, as soon as they saw the trailer for the Acolyte and they have the name for it and the premise is the dark side, an expansion of Sith ideology, they thought, oh, Bane better be in this, or Plagueis better be in this, or young Palpatine, and so like
Plagueis is like 10 years old right now.
so
I
it's
think
like,
the people that think that they're linking it too directly, like the idea of the show is called Acolyte and so therefore Sith Acolyte, they're being too literal. When if you just look at like the definition of an acolyte, it's just an assistant or a follower. And so yes, it could be someone who follows the Sith way, but it could also just be like someone who strayed from the Jedi way, or someone who has a very different interpretation of the Jedi way. An acolyte can be so many different things. And so I think I'm really curious to see how that plays out. It feels like a very like Knives Out, but not a parody and in Star Wars, like a murder mystery, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just excited to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah. Which, I mean, she's close friends with Ryan Johnson, so you hopefully. Dex and Dallas says, let's get a new dark side cult. You know, there is a dark side cult called the Acolytes of Beyond. Yeah, and I just I would love to have like a something of Xana or something of, you know, a Sith Lord be mentioned or be brought up, but anymore I'm wary, right? Because I feel like sometimes some of these things can overshadow the actual episode. You know, I love Andor, but people are like, it's Starkiller's armor, it's Starkiller's armor, it's Starkiller, and you're like, they're talking still. Like, we need to focus up, boys.
Yeah.
You know, and so
plot.
I have full faith that this isn't going to be a thing. I just hope that there's not that any cameos or fan service don't overtake in the story, right? We're not watching it for product placement for other Star Wars content, you know.
But okay, like if you're talking cameos, outside of a Yoda, Yaddle, Plo Koon, what cameos could we possibly have? Because even if you're looking at books, it's 100 years after Phase 3, more or less, something like that. So most people in Phase 3 won't even be around at this time. So I don't really know what you can do with cameos. The only one that I am hoping for is Plo Koon.
For sure that, yeah. But at that point,
yeah, I do love me some Plo Koon.
At that point, I don't consider them cameos. Whenever someone exists in the time period, and they're just there because they're supposed to be there, I don't consider that a cameo. So like, what I consider a cameo is that they are totally and wholly irrelevant to the story and the setting, and they're just like, oh hey, and then they walk off. That's like a cameo. But like, if we go to the council chambers and Yoda's there, I'm like,
C-3PO
oh,
and R2-D2 in Rogue One was a cameo.
yes,
Chopper.
yeah, that was a cameo.
Yeah, it was
Even-
less direct,
even
though,
General
because there was a
Syndulla.
blink if you and you'll miss it. But I mean, the camera goes to see through, and they're like, "Hey, we're here," and then the camera moves on. You know?
It's also like General Syndulla on the PA, you know. It's but if we go to the council chambers during a time where Yoda is the Grand Master, you're like, he's the Grand Master. It's not a cameo. In terms of like what we actually
Yario
can
Poof,
do,
though, I do want to see Yario. I've grown a great fondness for the dude.
I do think so in the interview, Leslie also talks about the rule of two, and talks about Sith pretenders, and I've been saying this for the longest time. The rule of two is not a galactic bound. It is not something that the galaxy adheres to. It is not something that you can control. Multiple people could have heard of the rule of two and started their own master and apprentice situation. So when we talk about the Acolyte and maybe a Sith comes in and reveals themselves, for all intents and purposes, they're pretenders, according to Palpatine or Plagueis, whoever is at the time thinking that they are the end-all be-all Sith. So you have a whole bunch of people that could be pretenders, could think that they're Sith. You have Acolytes of the Beyond. You have a lot of people who, like I said, the inspiration that Leslie said was Darth Treya. We could have somebody that could totally be coming at this from a different angle and also consider themselves and believe wholeheartedly they are Sith.
Yeah.
But are they Sith? Are they Sith according to Plagueis, or are they Sith according to someone else who also thinks that they're a Sith, and they're like, no, we only have a master apprentice. You're the third person. You're not a Sith. So it's like,
need the yellow
or
eye
is it
check.
someone looking to catch the eye or catch the interest of Sith that they think are around, or could it be like Asajj Ventress in the 2D Clone Wars, where after Dooku picks her up out of the pit, she's like, I am Sith, and he's like, no, sit down, and then he electrocutes her, very cruelly.
yeah. I just think overall we have to think that like the rule, and it kind of pervades in other stories as well. We have to think about the rules that are set in universe. They're not Star Wars rules. There's no rules of hyperspace that therefore eliminate the possibility of other things, right? So the rules established of hyperspace in the original trilogy is what we hear from Han. This ain't like Dustin Crop's kid. Without precise calculations, you could run into a star or planet, whatever. That's the rules.
Which is true.
Mm-hmm.
And it is true. But at the same time, we have people making those rules and setting them as like guidelines for Star Wars storytelling where someone can't possibly go against that. And in a sense where like you have this like soft rule that Han says in the original trilogy means that you cannot hyperspace ram in the sequels. So it's kind of like I've gotten
I
comments
argue that
on
his
this.
rule is the exact reason that you can.
Exactly.
That's all.
And we would have people from the prequels. We would have people from even the sequels arguing, well, they can't be Sith because there's the rule of two and there's already two. It's like, no, there can. Like, all you need is a person on the dark side who believes they're Sith. Like, again, the order in that time is not necessarily established, and they're not really a centralized thing like the Sith Empire in the Old Republic. There's no Dark Council. There's no official arbiter of the Sith other than Plagueis, and then turns into Palpatine. But we don't know about the outer limits of this. In Legends, there's a lost tribe of Sith, and so like.
Yeah, with Darth Bane and Xana finds this person who found a whole bunch of Sith relics, was supposed to go train with the Sith, before what happened on Ruusan. Didn't end up going. That saved his life, and then he gathered up some other people, and basically she was like, yeah, I want to join your organization. Well, cool, we'll hang out. She brought him to Bane, and then they attacked Bane. Bane killed them all. And she was like, no, I brought them to you, Master, to see if you were strong enough to kill them all. They would intentionally join organizations for the purpose of destabilizing and destroying them, and some of those were dark side organizations.
Shout out to Naf on the TikTok side. Is that my boy? Hi, Zane. What up,
Hello,
Naf?
Naf. What's up, bro?
And in the subject of Darth Bane, like he goes to the academy, he becomes a Sith, and he names himself Darth Bane, and
he calls out all the other Sith, and he's like, you guys aren't Sith.
like, yeah, like he doesn't join the Brotherhood, and he doesn't join the battle, and so what does that mean for the Sith? Is he still a Sith? Are the people he calls not a Sith not Sith? Is he not a Sith because he didn't join the Brotherhood? So it's kind of like who's the ultimate arbiter? There can be Sith all across the galaxy. You can go to like
when Maul gets back up, he still thinks he's Sith, and he gets Savage, and he takes Savage as his apprentice.
Yeah.
I mean, we already know Palpatine definitely broke the rule of two because he had both Maul and Dooku at the same time.
Yeah. So I think in general, and we'll make this the kind of the last question for you guys to
Duxon's
mull over.
comment is perfect here. Yes, the Sith, known rule followers.
Exactly. What are you most excited to see, consume, or experience in the Acolyte?
A manless.
Consume?
I'm sorry. But did you not see them at the premiere?
Yeah.
Listen, staying respectful was a struggle. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not here to be like, no. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, man. Based on what you know, I'm not asking for predictions because oftentimes Bad Batch proved that our predictions suck and are always wrong. So, I mean,
Hey, I hit the bingo. I hit the bingo at
did.
at the Diadcon, and I did a parlay at a little twofer. So, you know.
so just based on what you've seen so far, and it doesn't really, you don't really have to have seen. I'm not watching any of the TV spots. I haven't watched the fight. I haven't watched anything that has not been labeled a teaser, just for the sole purposes of going in blind. But what most excites you about the Acolyte? Like, if you were to, once you sit down on June 4th and you put the show on, like, what are you like? Oh, you know, the lore.
I'm excited to see a cameo from former Jaguars quarterback Blake Bortles.
Okay, so I saw
reference.
this on Twitter, but I don't know what the reference is. What's going on here?
So Manny Jacinto was in the show The Good Place, which is a phenomenal show, has a cult following.
Yeah.
But his character was just an absolute idiot. He was just like a stoner from Jacksonville who was DJ'd occasionally and was just like the worst, just a douchebag. And he was obsessed. He was just obsessed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Blake Bortles was the quarterback at the time. And so
got it. Okay.
It wasn't. I don't know what it is about the statement DJs occasionally that just struck me funny, but it's hilarious.
I feel like if someone's like, I DJ occasionally, you're like, oh, so you're a degenerate. Gotcha.
Let's see here. Daxon said, Master James Kenobi said light whip to my face. I mean, true. In one of the frames, it does literally go at the camera, so I'm excited to see that as well. Daxon says lightsabers go burr, dope fights, another Keldor Jedi, and more Sith, so it's gold. Definitely. I think this will be the most Jedi we've seen on screen live action. So, yes, I agree with that. I'm most excited to see that one scene where it's just a whole bunch of lightsabers going.
You think whoever designed that, like, dark side helmet is like a big My Hero Academia fan? Did it not feel...
I think go ahead.
T'Pol said, my most anticipated show I'm excited about. A new story that's not clones or the Skywalkers. That's also true.
I'm excited for diversity because I prefer diversity to good story. I only want diversity.
I mean, hey, in the same vein, Young said, I'm excited for all the color. I mean, she said colors, but...
Oh, man.
All right, Zane, go for it.
I think I would love to actually see them show the concept of, we just talked about earlier, of Jedi being able to visualize the Force differently in live action. That would be, to me, if you can show me that would be phenomenal.
I love that.
Outside of that, I'm just hoping for a fantastic story and great dialogue. I think part of why I loved Andor so much was it had those darker undertones. And if you can give me a story like that, I am all in. And that's what this feels like. So I'm really excited.
And that's what people have been saying, is it feels like Andor with lightsabers.
Yeah. So we'll see.
I mean, just like a follow-up, man. I think so. Have we been privy to how Vernestra sees the Force?
No, I do not believe so.
No.
We know that she actually wasn't particularly gifted with the Force, but just very like tenacious and a hard worker.
We do know she has this mental thing with hyperspace, right? Whenever she's in that in hyperspace, she sees things. I wanna get a scene with that. If they're in hyperspace, and I don't know if I would still call it at this age in her life suffering, but I would like to get like a technique that she's worked out, that she's mastered, kind of like when you see Mr. and Miss, or when you read Mr. and Mrs. X and you realize that Rogue has mastered her abilities and it's a completely different monster than what you're used to.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy broken.
But for Vernestra, I want to see, like, if they go to hyperspace, I want her to be like, now I can do a force hyperspace jump or something, and just like scout out the planet before they get there. It's like, oh, we're in hyperspace, let me look at this planet. Okay, 5 signs of life. And just something like that, just to kind of hint at that. Anything from you, Choco?
New Force lore.
Oh, absolutely. Really.
Yeah.
Just that's what I want. Just give us more explanation on the Force. Not explanation, but just more lore surrounding it. I don't ever actually want it to be fully explained. Keep the magic alive, but like that well has been getting deeper and deeper, and I love it.
Let's see here. Harith says, I know it's ironic to say with a High Republic show, but the lightsaber scene in the Acolyte felt so High Republic-y. Or High Republic-y. Young says, I just can't wait to see the Jedi as they were meant to be, not in times of war. Absolutely. I think this show is going to show us so many things, including the Force lore. The number one thing I won't be disappointed if it doesn't happen. But since this is a dark side centered, like an expansion of Sith ideology, as Leslie said, I really need them to have one person be like, I think the answer is both. I think we need to use both sides of the Force. And someone's like, you can't. Like, just explicit, you can't. And no great Jedi can't exist. I just want somebody to just maybe in one of the training rooms in the Jedi Order, some kid is like, can we use both? And the teacher's like, stop it. I know it's not going to happen, but with the addition of additional Force lore, additional dark side lore, I need somebody to be explicit about its corruption, its consumption of you, and how it demands more and more, at which point you cannot feed it. And
it feeds on you.
And it feeds on you. We need that in the zeitgeist. We need that in our economy of knowledge, because a lot of people still think that the dark side is just something that is cool, that you can tap into for some cool electricity powers, and there's no cost to it, even though the entire Skywalker saga is about the cost of the dark side. But
I also wouldn't mind getting something like that in Jedi 3, the game.
Yes.
That would be interesting to see it that way.
And that was as close to explicit as we could possibly get in Jedi Survivor, when Cal goes through it and Marin has to pull him out. That was kind of subliminal, but still kind of like, hey, like, you really can't do this.
You can't be doing this, bro.
Like, to get that in-game visualization of how massively taxing this is to you, I can't wait.
Harith, it's almost like the dark side is like an allegory for addiction, and this tends to go over a lot of viewers' heads.
Well, yeah, a lot of the people that tend to clamor for George Lucas and to the kind of like, we need him back, have not seen a lot of George Lucas's stuff on the Force. Project Happiness is a good interview to watch for George Lucas explaining the dark side as an addiction.
Oh, yeah.
You just got to keep upping the ante, You start off with that one hit and you're like, ooh, that feels good. but then like at the end of it all, you have your own guy, your own supply. And you've gone from a hit to entire stashes, and like you cannot sate that hunger anymore. Just like,
I think of it as like a stim pack in StarCraft. Like, yeah, it makes you like stronger and faster, but like there are consequences to using it.
Oh yeah, I know nothing about Minecraft. I thought
StarCraft.
StarCraft. Okay. Shout out to Bina Bees on the TikTok side. Anger can fuel you, but it can't feed you. Yeah,
I like that.
it's true. Jackson said, "Nuh-uh, I'm totes Darth Mar." Listen, don't put some respect in the name, because Darth Mar came back and was like,
I was like, oh yeah, I was wrong.
"Yeah."
That was dumb. My bad.
Like, he literally comes back to Satele and is like, "I was wrong. I thought I knew, but I didn't. There was only the Force." That's why he's one of my goats from Old Republic. And the only person I'll forgive for being a Force ghost while wearing your Sith mask. But are there any other thoughts on the Acolyte? We have just over a week to go. June 4th on Tuesday, I believe the going or the airtime is 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Pacific. There is a timer countdown on the website, and quick math, you will see that at 6 p.m.
Okay. June 4th, 6 p.m. Just over a week. I feel like this is one of those shows that will completely change things for Star Wars. Because it's
a lot of potential.
It's not only for its story, but it's going to set precedent for dark side stories. It's going to set a lot of precedent for the High Republic stories. If this show is as good as we are hyping it up to be, then we can foresee more High Republic shows moving forward. We can see. If we get a High Republic show, I just want a show called The High Republic. And it's not about anybody in particular. It's about the time period, and there are, just serialized stories from one person to the next, episode to episode, just within the time period. And that's how we get a multi-season show. The one thing that has hurt Star Wars for the longest time in terms of longevity for a show is because it's about a character that doesn't survive or doesn't have a future. And so when you put it smack dab in the middle of the High Republic and it's just about daily life, one episode's about this Padawan who's having trouble with the dark side. The other one is about this person who is trying to become a pilot and a smuggler or whatever, and it's just in the time period, and we see things that are indicative of it, so we get that that eye candy or that kind of dopamine hit from it being in the High Republic. But you can get multiple seasons out of these stories, whereas in the case it is right now, we have stories of people that have either have an end game, and stories of people that, at the other end of the timeline, it's kind of set in stone. So, for the Disney execs, if you want a multi-season show, just put it in the High Republic or the Old Republic and just serialize different people's perspectives and stories. I thought Choco had something to say.
No, thought about it, but it's gone.
Daxon wants a show on pure blood Siths called Sithari Calamari. Maybe we will get the High Republic Mando in Acolyte and throw the cosplay community into a storm.
Interesting.
Ooh. Yeah, that's another question that happens whenever we visit new time periods, and this includes the sequels. Where are the Mandalorians? I mean, now we have it, but we have it in the Mandalorian, but that's like, But where are the Mandalorians in the High Republic? We know that they're a warring culture at this time. So what they be doing? All right. Any final thoughts, guys? Anything? We'll take about 10 minutes to kind of just see if there's anything you guys want to talk about, any topic you want to discuss, any questions you have in the chat, or Zane, is there anything you want to just kind of get off your chest?
If anyone wants to do a silent watch party for the Acolyte, I'm down because I want to pay attention to the dialogue. And just like watch people's reactions.
Being thrown in there, 'cause...
I know. If Young is still here, I know Young feels it. I got you, Young. But no, I mean, look, I think it's tough to balance, right? Because you want to be excited about everything and you want the reactions, but you also want to see what's going on and unfolding. It's much easier to do a watch party the second time around, but you're also not getting the same reactions maybe as you might see on the first time. So it was not intended with shade, but inevitably I can see how it would be construed as shade.
Well, I mean, you know, there are different.
No, I've done watch parties with the people who are like, it's kind of loud.
Yeah. In that sense, I will kind of give ourselves some credit. I'll pat ourselves on the back. Our reactions are just reactions, and we're not inundating the entire watch party with conversation. So I mean, I think if you want to, you can come on to one of our reactions if you feel like it, but you know, just watch our Bad Batch reactions. It literally is just like when something happens, we're like, oh, is that? And then that's it. It's just like the show goes on. We're not overly kind of talkative, or we don't try to drown out the show. And if we do, we pause it, and that's more for our supernatural. In this case, no, we're lore guys. We're not gonna miss a beat. We're not gonna miss any conversations on this one.
Also, I'm a pretty quiet person in general, just like in real life. So.
Which is good, because if I need thumbnails of you, I'm getting them. You're not like talking or yelling. You're just like half of my Poggers emotes from you is, I don't know where they come from. I think Connor got them.
Makes sense.
But yeah, that'll do it for this episode of Dyad in the Force. I want to thank Zane for dropping by and talking with us. Zane, if you want to let everybody know where they can follow you on their socials, go for it.
I am my 2 credits on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. And the only thing that I will plug is, if you are a healthy individual, consider donating blood, because you might save a life.
Respect. Choco, any final thoughts?
What he said.
Donate blood.
Also, you know, High Republic, we've been eating well. This is the time. Let's finally bring the outside world into the High Republic. Show them love. Show them the respect and consideration that we wish we were shown when joining new areas of other fandoms. Love y'all and peace.
Absolutely. And as Daxon said, if you guys are still here, don't forget to drop that like. Really helps the channel out. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. But other than that, that's it. On to the next one.
For light and for life,
we are all the Dyad.
and may the Force be with you always.